Scatterwood Tales is a middle grades and intermediate reader, so it's geared a little bit easier to read. I know that older readers and better readers have enjoyed it, but the word choice in it's a little bit easier, so that readers that struggle a little bit can do it. Um, I originally wrote the first stories for my son, my oldest son, who was having he enjoyed stories very much, but he was struggling as a reader, and I wanted to write something that was high interest for him, but something that he could access. He's a much better reader now, but I've still kind of tried to gear the level of these stories to maybe readers that struggle a little bit, either younger or older readers that need a little bit of an easier time. Now the stories that I share on Patreon every fifth of the month are short stories set within the world of those novels, and in this case, it is a Lake Scatterwood tale. So, Tidy Up is a young reader story from the world of Lake Scatterwood Tales. The Tidy Sprites had lived in the forest around Lake Scatterwood long before there was a Lake Scatterwood, and long before people ever lived or visited there. They had lived there since, well, even the sprites didn't even the sprites didn't remember how long, but it was a very long time, even for creatures who kind of lived forever. It was a lot easier to keep the place clean before the lake. The lake wasn't all that untidy. There were trees at the bottom of the lake from a flood, but that wasn't a big deal. The big deal was the lake brought people. The people built the camp. The camp brought human children. The human children boys were the messiest, but human children girls were still messy to a tidy sprite. Tidy sprites liked tidy things, and they liked things tidy. Human children boys and human children girls were walking messes. Maybe they were tidy at home, but at camp without their parents, forget about it. Their beds were messy, the camp trunks at the end of their beds were messy, under their beds were messy, their shoes were messy, everywhere they walked they left a mess, behind their ears were messy, their hair was a mess, and even inside their noses were a mess. How could the inside of their noses be a mess? They were always picking their noses and eating the messes, but they were still a mess. Keeping the woods clean used to be as easy as painting the leaves different colors at the beginning of fall and then raking them up at the end of fall. Sometimes the tidy sprites had to put animal droppings into neat little piles, but no big deal. Human children, boys, and girls at Lake Scatterwood kept the tidy sprites busy, busy, busy all summer long. Still no big deal, though. That was the mission of tidy sprites. Keep it tidy was their motto. They put it on signs all around their houses and inside hollow trees. Tidy sprites didn't complain. Well, Bean complained. Bean complained a lot. He was assigned to Jake's trunk, and Bean complained the whole time he tidied. "Jake is the worst," Bean shouted in the darkness of Jake's camp trunk. "Look at this place. Just look at it." Bean kicked the corner of a Captain Face Punch comic book stuck between a busted whoopee cushion and a dirty pair of soccer cleats. The pages fluttered open and then fell back closed as Bean crossed his arms. He was smaller than the characters printed on the front of the comic book, and this was the biggest job in camp. Petal patted Beans on the shoulder and then smoothed out one of his wings where it had gotten bent. The Tidy Sprite elders wouldn't have given you this job if you couldn't handle it. They believe in you. This is a great honor to get assigned to Jake's trunk. They gave me this job because it stinks and no one wants it," Bean said. "It literally stinks in here." "The greatest tidy elves of all time have been assigned to Jake's trunk," Petal said. "They all retired, Petal, and it's still a mess," Bean yelled. "This is his favorite comic book, and look how he treats it. Why does he keep a busted whoopee cushion? Busted stuff needs to be fixed or thrown away. Every sprite knows that. Why are his soccer cleats dirty? He doesn't even play soccer. They were dirty when he put them in here. What kind of monster packs dirty shoes at the beginning of the summer? Stop yelling, Bean. They'll hear us." She looked around and tried to listen, but he kept yelling. "I hate to say something so awful, Petal, but I think Jake—" Bean took a deep breath. "I think he's being messy on purpose." Petal opened her mouth in shock. "How could you say such a thing? No one is messy on purpose. I know they are human children, but no one could be messy on purpose, could they?" Bean shrugged. "He has his clean clothes wadded up next to his dirty socks. Stinky socks on clean clothes. That has to be on purpose." "I don't know." Petal looked up at the closed lid of the trunk above them. "Still, You need to stop yelling. The human children boys are usually back in the cabin at this time. They'll hear you and find us. Bean waved both hands. Magic dust sprinkled off his fingers. They're probably out finding new messes to make. We're as small as insects. They won't notice us. They swat insects, Petal whispered. Swat them dead. I've seen them do it. Bean turned in a full circle. Why are there old stickers in here? Dirty old stickers with the glue all peeled off. Why? Shh. Petal waved her arms. I hear something. I think they're back. Fingernail clippings, Petal. There are fingernail clippings in the bottom of the trunk. Is he saving them? Bean, please, be quiet. She was sure she heard the door to the cabin open. Rebecca, you're not allowed in the boys' cabins. I'll give the whoopee cushions and bring them out here. That sounded like the human boy child, Jake. It was hard to tell with the trunk closed. The whoopee cushion is busted, Bean shouted. Bean, be quiet, Petal begged. A human child girl said something outside the cabin, but Petal couldn't tell what the words were. Human child boy Jake said, Then why did we waste our time coming all the way up here? I could have poked my finger on a gnome sword really bad. I could have gotten poked by a gnome arrow. I could have gotten covered in bird droppings. Are they talking about the gnomes? Petal asked. The ones with the orange hats? Bean asked. I don't like those guys. Not very tidy. What are the gnomes doing at Lake Scatterwood? Petal asked. Just drag your trunk out here so we can find what we need, please, the human child girl named Rebecca called from the doorway before Bean could answer Petal's question. The trunk slid across the cabin floor and bumped as it went out onto the porch with Bean and Petal inside. Everything in the trunk shook and a stack of candy bars fell on them. Perfect, Bean grumbled. Why not keep candy bar wrappers just in case? Why not? The trunk opened above them, spilling in sunlight. The human child girl Rebecca started digging through it as she searched. She was one of Jake's friends. Petal liked her. She kept her space tidy. Hey, human child boy, Jake said. Be careful, don't unfold my clothes. He never folds his clothes, Bean hissed. Shh. Petal held up her hands at Bean. You never fold your clothes, Jake, a human child boy named Sam said. He was one of Jake's friends. A human child boy named Cody was a friend too. Exactly, Bean agreed. I'm just going to wear them again anyway. What's the point? Human child boy Jake asked. Don't bend the corners of the comic books either, please. He is a monster. Bean covered his face with both hands. Sir, I would never fold down the page of any book, child girl Rebecca said. I like her, Petal whispered. The human child girl's name slid past the tidy sprites hiding in Jake's hand. Petal grabbed Bean's shoulder and flew with him inside one of the soccer cleats. I'd rather get caught, Bean pinched his nose. Really, human child boy Jake asked. How do you mark your place when you're reading? Human child girl Rebecca shook her head. This trunk is a mess. That's the truth, Bean shook his head. Wait until she accidentally grabs that crunched up pine cone Jake is collecting. Maybe if you told me what you were looking for, human child boy Jake said. The air horn, human child girl Rebecca said. Jake was quiet a moment and then said, Yeah, I don't know where that is. It has to be in there somewhere. I put everything in that trunk. Someone should really teach him about trash cans, Bean said inside the stinky shoe. The human child girl kept searching. The soccer cleat tumbled down into the trunk with the tidy sprites inside. Petal felt dizzy but stayed quiet. Hold on, Bean flew out of the shoe. Bean, what are you doing? I have to help her. She'll never find anything in here, Bean said. Are the birds spies? Human child boy Sam asked. Are they going to tell the gnomes where we are? I don't know, maybe, human child girl Rebecca said, without looking up from the trunk. It's too dangerous, Petal said. Bean shook his head. No, I do this all the time. If I didn't hand stuff to Jake every day, he'd never find anything in here. Petal asked, Do you think that's why he doesn't tidy? Because you keep handing him things so he never has to clean up? Bean thought about it and then shook his head. No, I really think he makes messes on purpose. Bean flew away before Petal could say anything else. It would be cool to fly on the back of a bird. That was the human child boy Cody. I'd be scared of being up that high, human child boy Sam said. Is there a bird big enough to carry a person? Jake asked. In a place like Lake Scatterwood, human boy child Cody said. Probably. There sure is, Bean said as he flew around Rebecca's hands. Wait until you guys meet the Phoenix. I don't think so, human child girl, Rebecca said, but I have a bird book if you want to look it up. Jake said, maybe later. I don't care enough to actually read a book. That's sad, human child girl, Rebecca said. Jake said, getting captured by angry gnomes doesn't put me in a reading mood, I guess. Bean flew through a tangle of old wires that went to nothing over a pile of wadded up wrapping paper, past a used tissue crushed with snot, and beside a peppermint stuck to the inside of the trunk. He doesn't even eat peppermints, Bean yelled. How are we going to stop them? Human child boy Sam asked. How do we get rid of them? Bean found the air horn and pulled it out of a mix of clean and dirty socks that made him so crazy he almost wanted to pull his own wings off just looking at them. The air horn was heavy and Bean almost dropped it. Petal flew up beside him and they lifted the horn toward the human child girl's hand. Be ready to let go, Bean whispered. The human child girl Rebecca lifted the horn out of Jake's trunk. Found it. Okay, Jake said. Now what? Rebecca tested the horn. It gave one quick, loud blare. The sound scared off the birds on the cabin's porch and made Petal jump. Bean was used to crazy noises from working in Jake's trunk. Human child boy Cody said, Oh, I think I get it, but what about the gnomes fighting on the ground? We'll figure it out, the human child girl said. The 4 human children ran off. They left the trunk outside. Bean hung his head. And they left the lid open. So messy. Petal patted his shoulder again. We helped them. I'm sure they'll take the trunk back inside once things are settled with the gnomes. Look on the bright side. Maybe it'll rain and wash this trunk into the lake forever? Bean asked. Petal asked, No, but we can have some fresh air while we tidy. I guess that's true, Bean said. Don't you have your own cabin to clean? Sure, Petal said, but I always have time to help a friend. They worked together all afternoon. Jake's trunk was still messy, but it was a little more tidy than when they started. That was good. Every month on Patreon, I share one free story for young readers set in some of the worlds that I write in.